Okay. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our Creative Connections guest speaker. We have today the fabulous Trevi Alohilani Pendro, who is a non-binary Haifa metalsmith maker and writer, and they are CCA alum with a BFA in jewelry and metal arts. So welcome, Trevi. Thank you for being here. I'm Sarah Cruz. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Student Success and Learning Resource Center. And we have Artie Samante here from Career Development. And I just want to thank you, big shout out to Career Development for hosting and sponsoring this event. So, we were in collaboration with them to make this possible. And hopefully there will be other speakers. This is hopefully a continuing series that developed out of the Career Connections Fair that happened, is it 2 weeks ago now already? Yeah. So, Trevi, so we'll get started, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you could just maybe tell us a little bit about your work and your background to start, and then we can get into some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Lee said, I am an alumni of CCA, and I got my BFA in Jewelry Metal Arts, and I have a minor in writing and literature as well. And I have started making jewelry fabrication. I took my first class when I was 12 years old, so I've been doing it for a long time. I was really lucky to be exposed to that when I was really young, and that helped me get to CCA, or at least helped me decide that that's what I really wanted to pursue in college and undergrad. And then, of course, being in college for it was like a whole crazy experience of so much learning on that front, and being exposed to so many other artists and students, like my peers and things like that. After I graduated, I did an artist residency, which I've actually done twice now, a couple years apart. That has informed my practice a lot. And at this point, I've been selling my own jewelry pretty much since I graduated from undergrad, a little bit while I was in school, but time, focus on other things. I've been selling my own jewelry line since I graduated, and I'm also the retail and operations manager of a jewelry gallery now. So that's kind of my career, I suppose, my current, as well as selling my own jewelry too. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so thinking about your experience at CCA and moving into your career, an inspiration for your art and jewelry. It sounds like you've had this inspiration for a long time, but coming to CCA and studying here, and some of the foundational courses and background, and thinking about influences and historical background and perspectives. What were some of your influences, and how has that affected your art?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess so. Something that I kind of mentioned a little bit in my artist statement, or something that I lead with, is I am inspired a lot by nature, which I feel like many people are. How can you not? But something that has always, I think, defined my work for me, or the way that I make and design, is that I'm inspired by not just kind of looking at nature or forms, and things like that, but my kind of experience of it. My craft and my direction has always been very personal and kind of emotional. And so I think while the work I make doesn't necessarily just look like a flower, or something like that, I'm more inspired by how I experience the world around me. So I've lived in very rural areas, so being in nature, how does that make me feel? And then how do I translate that, sensory, visual, whatever experience into a piece of work? So that's definitely huge for me. And I think an artist that is one of my favorites of all time that I kind of was inspired by the way she works, so it's had to be Louise Bourgeois, like making extremely emotional work that is clearly, you know, an experience of something manifesting into like a physical object. And, you know, her spiders are not like, oh, it's because I was inspired by a spider, right? You know, so I think I work in a really similar way, and seeing other artists contextually, historically who do that obviously has been a huge influence on my work. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. I love Louise Bourgeois. Her work is so fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you think some of your courses or coursework or studios at CCA have helped you to build a successful career?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I mentioned that I was a writing and literature minor as well. And while that's not like a studio course necessarily, um, being a writing minor was like inseparable for me from my studio work. Because, you know, that's, I think the studio stuff is obvious, right? Like you're building your skills and your craft. And the only way to do that is practice and time. Like it's just being in the studio and doing it and seeing the demos and being able to ask your instructors questions and things like that. Um, but I minored because it was like my work and my writing were just hand in hand all the time. And I think that realizing too, having a strong writing or like humanities base has influenced me as far as like my career goes, like extremely, because you know, when you think about finding a job or applying to opportunities like the residencies I've done or getting grants and things like that, um, you have to have those writing skills and that understanding of, you know, just humanities context, whatever, in popular culture, whatever it is, like in general, to be able to put yourself out there. Because at the end of the day, I mean, especially now, I think you know, we're starting to see more and more of each other in person, which is amazing. But um, you're gonna apply to opportunities, and people are going to be revealing you who have never met you, they've never heard your voice, you know, they don't even know what you look like. And um, having the writing skills and background has been extremely like integral, I think, to not only my studio practice, but also just my career and putting myself out there and feeling confident um, in being able to talk about myself or my work or that sort of thing.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Um, is there like a specific example you could give for people listening?
Like for of a class or something like that.
Or no, not even of a class, but like of a situation where you're like, oh, I've got this skill and like I know how to do this. And like
Yeah, I guess.
totally nailed it.
Yeah, actually, so I have one. Okay, I have one that I am recalling, and it was an opportunity I was applying for when I was still in school. So I was a senior and was trying to be all organized and apply for all of these opportunities prior to graduating. So I would have something lined up or have more of an idea of like, what am I going to do? Like once once I'm out of school. But one of the things that I applied for, so of course, right, like just cyclically, I'm thinking of summer first, right? And they are, so Penland School of Crafts has workshops all summer. It's an amazing, magical place. If anyone ever has the opportunity to go, please do. It's life changing. Everyone says that, but like it's true and it's hard to explain. But anyway, one of the things I applied for was a scholarship to go there because, especially coming right out of school, I was like, I have to get a scholarship if I'm going to go. And so I'm going to try. And the instructor who was teaching was this amazing metalsmith, Suzanne Pugh, who I was really excited to hopefully get the chance to learn from. And so, you know, to apply for a scholarship there, you have to write not only like a statement of financial need, like why, do you think you should receive this scholarship, but also kind of in tandem with that, a statement of intent, like what would it mean for you to come here? And what do you hope to achieve, and like that sort of stuff, which at the time I had never written anything like that before. And it felt very strange to me to be writing something about like, this is why I need this support. I just had never done something like that. Um, and but pulling from my experience writing essays where I'm trying to like prove a point, like to my thesis, that sort of thing, I was like, I'm just going to try my best and I'll put it out there. And I had one of my faculty read it before I submitted it. I was like, can you give this a look? Like, let me know if it sounds silly. I don't know. And he kind of jokingly told me, he was like, Trevi, he was like, do you know how hard it is for artists to write about themselves? It's like, oh, okay. And he said, this sounds great. I'm not even gonna, he like skimmed it. He was like, it sounds great. Just go for it. And I was like, all right. And I ended up getting a full scholarship to go. So, and I was there for a month. It was super amazing. I got room and board and everything. And yeah, that was the first time I had ever done that. And, of course, like you don't get everything that you apply for. That's, just part of the hustle and being an artist and putting yourself out there. But having that kind of set the precedent of utilizing skills in a different way now that I was coming out of school. Not only was I very grateful to have had that happen to me, but it showed me that I could, take all of these things I learned from school and start to apply it in different ways that would actually impact what I was doing and the opportunities I was going to get moving forward.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear. Yeah, writing, I've taught writing in the past, so I'm a very big advocate of writing.
Cool.
That's so great. That's so great to hear you say that. Yeah, and the way those things translate into like the real world and starting and launching your career. That sounds like a really exciting start too after finishing, that you already have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually segues really nicely into one of my next questions. Thinking about like building your career, and like it sounds like you were really great about being proactive and like having a kind of jump start on things, as you were graduating. If there's any seniors out there, I hope you're listening. Things to think about. So, how else have you worked on approaching building your career, like once you got out of CCA, and like building a professional network? And how has that been important, and how have you approached that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have done it in a few different ways. And I think, in retrospect, all of them were super important. And I'm very grateful that I tried all of the things. And, that's something that like, I think I can't um, stress enough is if you like just try whatever, if it calls to you, if it sounds fun or interesting. I have always approached jobs as, of course you want to apply because you feel like I'm qualified and I can do well in this position, but I've always approached jobs as learning experiences too, because I, especially like when you're a student or coming right out of school, it's like any of these jobs are going to be something that I've never done before. And like, what am I also going to learn from it? Or what in the job description is showing me this is what I'm going to be building upon or focusing on moving forward. So when I first graduated, I did a residency, which obviously is an amazing networking opportunity. Being with other residents, there, it was like a small group of us, and just how your sphere gets like bigger and bigger and bigger from there. All of the visiting artists that came through the residency to teach classes was huge. My mentor at the residency, obviously anybody she knew, now I knew, which was a very great thing. But residencies aside, like when that ended and I was returning to the Bay Area, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I was applying to like all of these jobs that sounded interesting to me. And I started with like a few part-time jobs. Like one is a bench jeweler at a woman who owns a store. Um, I got offered a temp position at CCA in academic advising. And then I was teaching at the Crucible in West Oakland. So I was doing all three of those things, here and there, to try and sustain myself. Obviously, all extremely different modes of working. And, at the end of the day, doing all of those things taught me different skills and cultivated different things in me. And it also helped me figure out what I wanted to pursue further and what I didn't. So I think that's really important too. It's like you could be in a job that, yeah, like you learn a lot and it's a great experience. And it also teaches you, I don't want to do this forever, or I don't want to do this full time, like that sort of thing. And I wouldn't have ever figured that out if I hadn't at least tried. Um, Especially because I think, coming out of school, you can have ideas about like, this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is the kind of job that I want to have based on my major or whatever. But really, our majors and our skill sets are so much more than that, and can apply to so many different things. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, that's what I'm going to go a little off book here because that just made me think of something. Has your skill sets and your like professional development and your metal arts, has that translated into something that you didn't expect it to, or like an unexpected opportunity or something you're like, oh, I'm qualified to do this thing that I didn't even know existed?
Yeah, well, I mean, my job now, actually. So, I got here because so I used to be a full-time academic advisor at CCA. And I did that for 2, 3 years. And that entire time, I had a job that was just on Sundays. So I worked 6 days a week for like 2 or 3 years. And this job on Sundays was being a gallery, person assistant, and doing the social media for Shibumi Gallery, which is a jewelry place in Berkeley. And we do custom jewelry, we have a gallery space, that sort of thing. So I had this job on Sundays and it was my 6 day a week of work. And people always ask me, they were like, why do you do that? Like, you don't need to work 6 days a week. You have a full-time job. And for me, though, I was like, this is like my link to my jewelry community. And, it's inspiring to be around all this beautiful jewelry all the time and meet these artists and, that sort of thing. I love working there. So I just kept doing it. And so, I just hung on like really tightly to this job, even though I was working way too much. But so, now 5 years later, I'm the retail and operations manager there. And now that's my full-time job. And she's never had a retail or operations manager before. We basically like created this job because I was here. And as my time commitments changed of how much time I could give to that gallery and that sort of thing, my job just kept evolving into what it is now. And so 5 years ago, this wasn't even a position that she had. So she just had gallery assistants, and as the owner in the small business, she just did everything else herself. So and I never would have known, and I never would have found out had I had I not worked 6 days a week for too long. But I think that's really my example of just like how things change, or in a way, like when we're really excited or passionate about something, and we stick with it, um, we kind of will find out about things that we didn't even know existed. Or at least, I guess, in another way too, like creating opportunities for yourself. It's a way to think about it too.
Yeah, that's such an inspiring story. I love that. Yes, where, create your own opportunities and follow your passion. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and you have a beautiful website. I encourage anyone listening to check out Trevi's work. It's really amazing and phenomenal. Um, their jewelry is amazing. Your prints are amazing. I found the prints that are on there. I was like, oh, these are so great. Um, so thinking about that and thinking about your own work, your website, what are some best practices you would suggest to artists and creatives to undertake to like build an audience and a customer base and have that following? You mentioned doing like social media. I know like that's a really important way to connect these days and to get your work out there and to be visible. So could you speak to those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for one, it's important to consider what is the audience that you want to have and what is that going to look like. Just because I've transitioned, when you think about like, I want to get my work out there, I want people to see it. That's great. But I think, like, for me personally, sometimes that can be done kind of haphazardly where you're like, I want to get my work out there. And then it's like, to who? When, where, like it's when there's not a little bit more of a specific direction, it can feel like you're doing a lot of work and not getting much back for it. So having like a focus in that way of like committing to who you want to reach is, I think, is really important. Um, I used to be like an in-person person, obviously pre-pandemic. I So much of me getting my work out there was I wanted to meet people. I wanted to talk to them about my work, meet other makers about their work. So I did like a lot of craft fairs, um, which was wonderful. And I miss them. I haven't gone back to doing them yet, but that was like my bag. Was I would meet people, I would talk to them, they would see my work, associate our conversation with the work I was making, whatever. And then that, built a pretty good Instagram following to begin with, like starting from nothing, for example. As far as like, I knew that the people that were finding me, it was because like we had some in-person connection in that way. Um, and then, now I've kind of taken a step back. I don't really do craft fairs anymore. And my focus is on selling my work at shops and like retail spaces. So, which is the total opposite. It's like people selling your work for you. Nobody knows who you are. Or, they can read your little bio or something, but they're not having that kind of like individual connection with you. And it's more just, is the like work speaking to them or not, when you can't be there to explain it, like, or talk about it, or even they just like you as a person or your personality, and then that excites them about buying your work. So um that's more of my focus now, and I try to like consider that a little bit more when I make my work, and how I approach kind of my networking, knowing that people who are finding me on Instagram now, or getting to my website, it's because they saw my work somewhere, and then they get to my Instagram, and what do they see? And something that I think has also worked really well for me and is important, because when we think about social media, we think about these really like curated spaces, or your website looking for professional and that sort of thing, which is all really important, of course. But um, something I have learned from talking to other people, from doing this for all this time, is people really, really love to see the person behind the work, or know about you, like, because especially with art and craft, like jewelry, it's so impacted, and not necessarily in a negative way. It's amazing that so many people are making things and putting them out into the world and sharing them. But it's also like, who are you though? And I think that people get really excited about knowing the person behind the work, whether they end up buying something or not, whatever. But that's a way to really connect with people who are, either going to support your art, because they buy it or they share it with other people, like, hey, I saw this artist that I think you'd really like, go check them out, and however that turns out. I think that's something I try not to forget is, I could post all of these curated photos of my jewelry and never show my face. But I think that showing who you are behind the work and making it a little bit more personal in that way, not like too personal, but if you're not comfortable, but that really pulls people in, to say like, oh, it's a real person making these things. It's a small business, like they're excited and they're making these things for you to hopefully enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. What do you think was the impetus for that shift from like, I just got to get my work out there to kind of wanting that more curated experience?
Yeah, I think one, I mean, time, when doing, these residencies where I very luckily had the time and space to really focus on my craft and, not only making, but figuring out what did I want as a business or, as an artist, like what did I want to put out there? Um, I mean, having the time to be able to figure that out obviously was huge. But I think on top of that was also meeting so many other people and seeing different perspectives of what they were doing, because there are some artists or jewelers that you don't even know the name of the person, the brand, which is great. Like that's really cool. And then there are other ones where the brand is the person, whether that's like literally the name, of the brand comes down to it's their name or it's something made up, sort of thing. Um, but seeing these kind of different perspectives, following all these other jewelers on different social media, and just kind of getting down to what did I want to share and what did I want that to look like, was really important. And I mean, that's also why it's so important to pay attention to like what your peers are doing or what are people doing that you admire, like who are all your favorite makers or artists and what are they doing? You don't have to do the exact same thing, but having um, context for that and seeing how people go about those things differently, I think helped me learn a lot, including seeing like, I love this artist and my Instagram would never be that curated, like I'm like, that's amazing. I'm not going to do that, like kind of thing. I don't have time or, whatever it is.
Yes, you could admire it and be like, I love that you're doing that. That's not for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think it's really important, right? Thinking about like your goals and like, what do you want? And I think our first impetus also might be like, I just got to get out there, right? And then you start
Yeah.
sort of adjust and shift and be like, yeah.
Yeah, and that being said too, I think just I want to like mention before I forget, seeing what people were doing, and then um when I was like, I just want to get out there and trying to figure out what that looked like, putting too much definition of success on other people, because you can admire an artist and love what they're doing and like try and do everything the same, but um yeah, realizing like, is that really who, like what I want to do or what I want to look like? Or, maybe one person's success is great, but you're like, actually, I don't want that, like I don't want to be in 100 stores across the country. Like that's amazing, but that's not necessarily what I want. I want to do craft shows every month and meet people and have my work it out that way, like trying to not pigeonhole yourself based on what looks successful, in
Yeah.
general, I think.
Yeah. I think that's so important too, to not like have one definition of like, I have to do that to be successful, that there's many
Hmm.
different paths to success and there's many different paths that a career can take.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Um, Still thinking about like careers, like what was a challenge that you have encountered so far, and how did you like face that or work on it or spin it or overcome it.
Like in a career, you mean?
Yeah,
Or like job related? I'm like,
could be. Well, I mean, you can interpret that. It could be job related, it could be in your own artwork. I don't know. It could be both if you want to talk about both.
yeah, I think, I mean, something that I have found is, yeah, kind of speaking to the like definitions of success or like trying to compare myself. I think something I have struggled with over time was thinking like if I'm not fully supporting myself on my art, I'm failing because I went to art school and I got a VFA and that's my craft and I love it and I'm passionate about it. So like if I'm not like this old and I haven't like made a successful jewelry brand like that is paying my mortgage, then I'm not doing something right, like or whatever that looks like for people. And I think something but then like I was saying at the end of the day, I realized like that's not what I wanted. I don't want to, which some people do, that's great, but I don't want to run a business that is solely responsible for, paying all my bills. That's my I learned just from working for other people and seeing how I work in the studio on my own stuff and things like that. I was like, I want to continue my jewelry business. I also really enjoy working for other small businesses. That keeps me connected. It keeps me inspired in a lot of ways because it's an easy way for me to always be seeing other people's new work and networking and meeting other artists and meeting other business owners and now like they carry my work at their shop too, that sort of thing. So that was definitely a big struggle of more of that mental block because there have been periods where I tried to fully support myself with my jewelry and it was fine and I was exhausted and I did not enjoy it and it almost made me, I think I've heard some other peers say this as well. And again, like everybody is so different, but when it became my full-time job to be working on my art, it wasn't as fun anymore. Or, I realized like, yeah, I'm spending time making and I'm spending the other 80% of the time like running the business, doing paperwork, figuring out, like that sort of thing. And it was a huge shift for me when I realized like I want to have my business, I want to make my art and I want to share it with people and be excited about it. And I also don't want to have to be hustling in that way all the time. Like I want to have that business and also have a career that I love and I'm excited about alongside that. And they're gonna be, in conversation with each other. I didn't like quit my art to get a job, like or anything like that. I think they inform each other a lot. And I'm really grateful that I figured that out and am now in a place where I have a job that I love that also informs my art practice too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. And I think that constant reassessment is like so important in a career. And as an artist, like, what am I doing and how do I determine success?
Yeah. And maybe in 5 years, I will have a fully sustaining jewelry business. Yeah, who knows? Like,
Who knows?
yeah.
Anything is possible, right? And I think we have to remember that and not get tied into expectations sometimes to keep the door open for possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so great. So thinking about like your values and vision, which I think you've really spoken to, what do you see as like sort of your trajectory for the future? I mean, it's a predictive question, but what would you like to see, but how would you like to continue to grow and develop in both your work and in like the career aspect?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like there's so much. Well, I will say, so I've been a manager of sorts for the last few months, and actually this month, April, is my first month. Like you were saying, Sarah, for you too. My This month is my first month being the retail and operations manager and starting to work full time. So that's a big in a trajectory way. I'm just starting this chapter of that, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And like I said, um, this has never been a position at the gallery before, so um, I'm we're all learning. We're learning. I'm figuring out what is this job. It's like I'm almost figuring out my own job description, right? Like we're seeing like what do we need, what's the work that's being put in, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of, it's begun, but I'm still in the trajectory, so I'll let you know, get back to you on that. But otherwise, that being said, which is funny, these things are happening at the same time. Of course, it's everything all at once, right? I'm also starting to work on my own jewelry more now. I've had little kind of bursts where I, make a lot and I disperse it to the handful of stores that I sell my work at. And then it's out of sight, out of mind. I don't have to worry about it. But I am now, because I'm setting up a studio at home for the first time, having that much more easily accessible to me is obviously very exciting. And so I'm figuring out where does that fit in to me, for me to be consistently not only making more work, but I think playing in the studio a little bit more. So I'm excited about that possibility too. I'm seeing where that goes. I, got to keep my things in stock at my stores and whatnot. But I have been focusing a lot on, commissions, like custom commissions, and keeping stock in the stores that carry my work, and haven't been spending a lot of time just like messing around or like exploring. So I'm hoping to get into a little bit more of that, because I think I also really miss the more art jewelry side of our community in that way, and hoping to start paying a little more attention to things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that ability to play, I think, is so important for artists, right? Like that's the creative space where invention happens and new ideas develop. It's really exciting and also fun. Yeah, that's so great. It sounds like you're like finding that great balance between like you're working and doing something you really love that's also inspiring, that feeds your art, and that's so great. It's so wonderful. Yeah, great talk. I think now what I would like to do is open it up for like Q&A. We have some folks from career development here who might have questions for you. And our student who's here. So can either, I think, we're a small enough group that if people just want to unmute and ask your question.
I'd like to ask a question if it's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Trevi. Thanks for being here
and
making time for us. My question is, I know you presented, I think over a year ago you presented and you were doing your residency. So so I'm wondering what you see the future of fine artists in relation to, or as a result of what's happened the last 2 years. So as a result of the pandemic, of a lot of places shutting down, not networking. So how do you see the next year going, for fine artists? Like where should they go to meet people, and how has it changed paths and opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, it's like crazy. It's like it could go on and on, but I think, obviously in the pandemic, especially, at the height of like being locked down and that sort of thing, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but on one hand, like I think artists, we can be very solitary and like put our heads down and throw ourselves into work. So, maybe in some ways that worked out in, some sort of way. But at the same time, I think, when we're not exchanging ideas and dialogue, um, you know, on our own terms whenever we want, like it's also very like kind of sad and isolating, I mean, I think that could be said for anybody, not just artists, but I like to kind of think that artists are also just like pretty deeply like in tune with, ourselves and our emotions in a lot of ways when it comes to our practice. And I think not having anybody to dialogue that with in the same way is really, kind of emotionally exhausting. So in time, I think that getting back out there, I know like a lot of craft fairs are starting to reopen and happen again, especially, because a lot of them can happen outside too. And the weather's getting better, and it's lighter outside, but those are just so amazing, whether you're participating or not, especially like in the Bay Area where our community is so vibrant and just like I think eager and excited to get back out there. I feel like being at a craft fair, whether like you're selling or you're just going and hanging out, like you can meet so many people there. And taking down every like different vendors like Instagram handles and things like that, like, and just expanding your community that way. I mean, I've met so many people like going to a craft fair that say like I wasn't selling at, and I took down their Instagram or whatever, and they we had a chat or something. I bought something from them, maybe not, whatever. And then I followed them on Instagram, and then they saw like, oh wait, this person makes jewelry. I think I met them at the craft fair today, and so there's another connection of an artist now that I'm like, nice to meet you. Yeah, like I just bought like a patch from you. I also make jewelry, like I think just putting yourself in those spaces, and honestly, like coming out of the pandemic, whether you're ready to like full force do that, like, and have the social like capacity to do that, um, even just kind of being around it, being around other people, going to see art again, being like in creative spaces. Um, it first, like it's kind of scary. You're almost like, yeah, the exhaustion of like becoming social again. But then I think getting into those spaces again, you are reminded of like how invigorating it is to be like around other creative people and experience art in like a public space, or being like around your community again. But I will say too, like during when we were, like a much more shut off from each other in a lot of ways, that I think was when, you wanted to seek it out, was special in how much more art I found from around the country, around the world, when virtually through social media, etc., was the only way to connect with people. Um, that really broadened my scope a lot too. Like for example, and like I think that there's something that could still be really important in that, even moving forward. Like I did like a small business group when like kind of workshopy type thing during the pandemic, and we met every week for like a couple months, and we would like share what we were working on, and like we were trying to achieve like goals together, like kind of in steps. And I met all these amazing makers from around the country that I never would have connected with otherwise, um, because there is so much out there. And now I had like faces to names. We, were obviously creating a more like personal connection because we were kind of supporting each other and giving feedback and critique. So that never would have happened if it weren't for the lockdown and things shifting to be more virtual. And even now, I'm like, I would still do something like that again just because I found people that I never would have even met in person. Um, so I think kind of finding those little moments um, that we can still do moving forward to like stay connected or meet new people too, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Other questions?
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story. It's awesome to kind of see how you really have created your own pathway to where you're at currently, and to also hear where you want to move towards. I think that's always important for not only students to know, but just for people to know that even when you reach a certain place, you still want to keep going in a particular direction. I think the question that I had is, if I were a student that's, really struggling to kind of visualize what my next step is going to be after I finish at CCA, what is some words of advice that you might give a student about that?
Mm, so that's a good question. What do you think? I mean, I would say kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier, or tying into what I mentioned earlier, right? Like one, like not setting really intense expectations of yourself. I think we see like what our faculty do, and like even in that, like everyone who is an instructor at CCA and is a practicing artist, like they do so many different things and have, which is like a little sidebar. I was always one of those people that when I had different faculty that I was really excited about their work or whatever, I would ask them like about their story. And that really taught me a lot. So if you get an opportunity to do that, ask them how they got where they are now, because there's cool stuff in there. But aside from that, yeah, not setting the expectations too, I think, concrete, like this is what I need to do to be doing well. Like I need to get this job in this firm, or I need to find Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in my field immediately. Like, that sort of thing. Because yeah, like at the end of the day, like artists, designers, like we're really creative people. And I think putting ourselves into a box is we're stifling ourselves in a lot of ways. So being really open-minded to roll with like what comes your way, including creating your own opportunities, right? Of like maybe you don't see a place where you feel like you fit or would be good for you and what you're excited about or what you want to do. So try and figure out how to create it for yourself, even if it's in a pre-existing space, like I was saying with my gallery position. Like, and I think people want to learn from you too. So, and utilize like what you have to bring to the table. So don't forget that, your opinion is really important too. And maybe you're going to see something in a space that they don't even know that they need yet. So I think that that's really important. And also, like I mentioned earlier, like try everything. Like, don't be afraid to just go for it. Like all of the jobs that I've had, like I mean, I'm really lucky in this way. I'm very grateful for every single job I've ever had, because like not only did I learn things from every single job that have led me to the skill set I have now and that I still utilize, but all of those positions, there were ones that helped me figure out more what I didn't want to do. Like I like these aspects of this job, this isn't really working for me. Maybe I should try something a little bit different. And you're never gonna know until you try. So yeah, just try anything that sounds exciting. Without being too like loose, like yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really inspiring. And I love the emphasis on thinking of things as a learning experience, that everything is an opportunity for like growth and development, even if it's not the thing you thought you would be doing. But I think that's really important to remember. Any other questions? you have any parting thoughts for us, Trevi?
I don't know. That last question was a good parting thought. I'm like,
Yeah,
do it all.
that's kind of a good end note. Maybe we should end there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like, this has been so inspiring. It's so wonderful to hear your story. And yes, you just have so much to offer. And everyone go check out Trevi's work. It's beautiful and amazing.
Thank you.
Um,
Oh, I will say, I mean, I do really love being a resource to people. So, you know, if you find my website or my Instagram or whatever, you can always reach out. And I want to see people's work too. So,
yeah, and CCA I haven't even been here a year, and I am just blown away by the work I see students doing here. It's so phenomenal and amazing.
it's one of the biggest things I miss about being at CCA is being able to go to the student shows. Every Friday, I would go walk over to the galleries and on my lunch break and look at the student shows, and amazing. It kept me inspired, that's for sure, all the time.
Well, thank you so much, Trevi. Thank you to Career Development. Thank you, Artie and Deanna, for sponsoring and helping organize and doing all the technical things. We hope everybody enjoyed this fabulous talk. It will be recorded and we will be posting it to the portal page, I believe. So, all right. Have a lovely evening and thank you again.
Thank you so
virtual
much for
round of
having me.
Thanks,
Everybody.
Trevi. It's good to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Bye.